Welcome to my educational review of the Fender Squire Affinity Stratocaster. That's quite a long name, which I will explain in this video, whilst also reviewing the guitar. Before that, the two questions burning at the very core of your being that need answering in this video. Firstly, how many donuts can I eat in 1 minute? That would be not as many as I thought, apparently. And secondly, should you buy a Fender Squire Affinity Stratocaster? The quick answer to that question, for those of you in a hurry, is yes. They are amazing and worth every cent, penny or satoshi, if you can find a shop that takes satoshis. Honestly, I've owned a lot of guitars, including more expensive Stratocasters, and I still like the Affinity Stratocaster. I use mine for practicing, making educational videos, and gigging live. Yes, I use a guitar worth under 250 euros for gigging live. The ukulele I play with 3 in the dark cost almost 3 times more than that. Fun fact about using inexpensive instruments, the guitarist from Genesis, Mike Rutherford, has been known to use a Fender Squire Bullet Stratocaster live. If you don't know who Genesis are, don't worry, but all that statement means is that there is a guy gigging in a literally world famous touring band using an even cheaper Fender Squire guitar than the Affinity live. If you ever needed proof that you don't need an expensive instrument to make music with, then there it is. For the price of the Affinity, you simply cannot go wrong with this entry-level Stratocaster. And no one pays me to say that. If they were rubbish, I simply wouldn't have made this video. That was the short answer, and always as part of the longer answer, and for those of you who want to become proper musicians and learn something new about music, I want to say something you won't hear anyone else say, and that is the size of your hands. Before that, let's just demystify the very long name of this guitar. It's a Fender Squire Affinity Stratocaster. Fender is the make, like Ford make cars, Fender make guitars, and Squire is their budget brand. So Fender Squires are cheaper and have less fancy materials and parts than Fenders. Next, Stratocaster is the shape. Guitars come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You get Stratocasters, which is what we are talking about in this video. You get Telecasters, which get their name from the invention of the television. You get the Explorer shape, the Les Paul shape, and so on. In the world of guitar, it is common for a specific shape of guitar to have a name. So when you say you want a Stratocaster, everyone instantly has a more specific idea of what you want than if you just said, you want an electric guitar. An Affinity is the specific model. So Fender Squire make what is called a Bullet Stratocaster, an Affinity Stratocaster, a Classic Vibe Stratocaster, and a Contemporary Stratocaster. Fender, that is not Fender Squire, make what is called a Player Stratocaster, an American Ultra Stratocaster, an American Professional 2 Stratocaster, and so on. There are so many. And the models are linked to the brand. For example, the Affinity is only made by Fender Squire and the Ultra only by Fender. You can't buy a Fender Affinity, only a Fender Squire Affinity. Even I'm surprised as to how complex branding of guitars is, but hopefully you know more than you did 2 minutes ago. To recap, Fender Squire is the make, Affinity is the specific model, and Stratocaster is the shape. 2 small bonus points. Stratocaster gets shortened to Strat, almost no one ever says Stratocaster, and within each specific model, like the Bullet Strat, Affinity Strat, Classic Vibe Strat, or the Contemporary Strat, there are still extra options. including obviously the color, but more importantly, the type of pickups, the fretboard, the woods, and so on. There's a heck of a lot of variation available to suit your needs, which can be overwhelming or awesome depending on how you look at it. If this video is making you feel overwhelmed, but you want an Affinity Strat, which is what we're focusing on in this video, then my advice to make the process really simple is to ask yourself if you like heavier styles of music or softer styles of music. If you like heavier styles of music like rock and metal, then maybe you should buy an Affinity Strat with at least one humbucker pickup, or possibly two. And if you like softer styles of music such as indie, blues, jazz and rock and roll, then buy an Affinity with single coil pickups. If you aren't sure what kind of music you want to play, then buy an Affinity with one humbucker and two single coils. And those are the only three pickup configurations available on the Affinity Strat. Two humbuckers or three single coils, or two single coils and one humbucker. And that said, those are the most common pickup configurations for any Stratocaster. Remember, there are timestamps in this video so you can skip any bits you already know about. But a humbucker is a pickup that looks like a double strip or double unit, and a single coil pickup are pickups that look like a single strip or single unit on the guitar. That makes your choice a lot easier. You like heavy music, you ask the shop assistant for something with humbuckers on. You like softer sounds, then you ask them for single coils. They will know what you mean. If they don't know what you mean, get the heck out of that shop. Shopping online, you can see in the guitar spec if the guitar has single coils or humbuckers, or if it has one humbucker and two single coil pickups. In general, humbuckers sound better for heavy guitar sounds and work better with distortion guitar effects, whereas single coil pickups give you a less dense, brighter guitar tone, which is great for softer styles of music. There are no rules there, that's just my quick tip if you're a beginner buying your first electric guitar and you're feeling overwhelmed by the sheer number of options within the Affinity range of guitar. Never mind the number of different types of guitar that you can choose from. Something else that is useful when shopping online is that there will often be codes next to the name of the guitar when looking at the listing on an online guitar shop. The irritating thing here is that the order of the codes isn't always the same, which can make it a little tricky to understand. But usually the first part of the code is the pickup configuration, followed by some information about a specific wood, followed by the color. For example, a website listing might say Squire Affinity Stratocaster HHILCF or Affinity Strat FM HSS SS. HH means the guitar has two humbuckers, HSS means the guitar has one humbucker and two single coils, and SSS means the guitar has three single coils. And those are the only three pickup options for the Affinity Strat. Then the FM means flamed maple, that is the wood that is placed on the face of the guitar. It's maple and it has a figuration, that is a pattern that looks like flames, hence flamed maple. IL stands for Indian laurel, which is telling you the specific wood the fretboard is made from. MN means maple neck, so there isn't a fretboard, so to speak. The whole neck is made of maple and the metal frets are then hammered into the neck rather than having a separate piece of wood for the fretboard. So that second part of the code is telling you something about the wood used on the guitar, but it could be telling you about the fretboard or the face of the guitar. Go figure. The final part of the code is the color. CF means charcoal frost metallic, OW means Olympic white, and SS means sienna sunburst. Amusingly, the Affinity Strat with a flamed maple top or front, which has the one humbucker and two single coil setup, is painted in sienna sunburst. And that confused the donuts out of me, because at least on one website, I've seen the color code accidentally merge with the pickup code. So HSS is humbucker single coil, and SS is sienna sunburst. But it looks like HSSSS on the listing. So at first, I thought it was an error on the website, as it otherwise looked like the guitar has 5 pickups. But it is just humbucker single coil, and then the paint job is sienna sunburst. A sunburst finish on a guitar is when the color changes from the center to the edge in a color gradient. To reinforce everything so far, I would always start with the big picture and zoom in. So there are different makes of guitar: Fender, Gibson, Schecter, and so on. Some companies have budget subsidiary companies, like Fender has Squire and Gibson has Epiphone, that make the same kind of guitars as their main brand, but significantly cheaper, using cheaper materials. Then you get the types or shapes really of guitar that companies offer, like Fender Squire offer Stratocasters, Telecasters, Jazzmasters, Jaguars, and so on. And as I keep saying, those are types of shapes of guitars with specific characteristics and features. Then when you've found the manufacturer you like, the type or shape that you like, you're left with the series, of which, for example, Squire has 4 series of Stratocaster: the Bullet, the Affinity, the Classic Vibe, and the Contemporary. When you've narrowed that down, you then get options of the colors, materials, and pickup configurations of the guitar model within the series you are interested in. If you've made it this far through the video, then what's great is that the knowledge I've just shared with you is still useful if you decide to look at a completely different guitar and not an Affinity. It's important to me that you understand that I plan all of my videos so that you get knowledge that can be used everywhere and not just on the specific topic that you clicked on the video for. Watch some of my other videos to see how I'm doing my very best to help you improve as quickly and effectively as possible as a complete musical ninja, and not just as a one-trick pony who knows only a few specifics. This leads nicely to the next thing I want to talk about that is obvious but not considered nearly enough by guitarists in general. That is, when you buy a guitar, you should first consider the size of your hands. To prove that guitarists at every level don't include that enough or at all in their guitar buying process, think about how you decide to buy a new guitar. What are the things you focus on? The color, the pickup, the woods, the design, the cost, where you will get it from, the sound, pretty much everything other than the fundamental fact that you're going to use your hands to play it. And you need a guitar that fits your hands. Not my hands, not your friend's hands, not the shop assistant's hands, not your favorite famous guitarist's hands, but your hands. Guitars come in different sizes, and even though you can develop your ability to stretch, and playing a larger guitar won't necessarily stop you from being able to play a piece of music that you like, it will make it less comfortable. This obvious concept that you want a guitar that is the right size for your hands is more nuanced than you might think, because the comfort factor will affect how much you pick up the guitar and play it, which in turn forms a positive feedback loop. You get pleasure from playing guitar, so you play more, which then means you play better, which allows you to play more exciting pieces of music, which in turn makes you want to play more again. And the loop continues. You feel good about your guitar when you pick it up, you want to do it more, and so on. Whereas if you feel uncomfortable when playing, you're not going to want to pick up the guitar in the first place as much. So you won't progress as quickly, and you might feel that playing guitar is too difficult for you. And you'll go back to things that you are better at, or that are easier for you, like playing video games or sports, or just watching TV. So what governs the size of a guitar? That would be what is called the scale length. The scale length of a guitar, or any stringed instrument, is the vibrating length of the string. That is to say, the scale length of a guitar is the distance from the nut to the bridge. And this distance affects the distance between the frets. The longer the scale length, the larger the distances or gaps between the frets, which simply means you're going to have to stretch a little further, and everything is going to be that little bit more difficult for you. Unless you have large hands or long fingers, in which case you want a longer scale length, because a shorter scale length will mean the frets are closer together, and that could be awkward for you if you have large fingers. It might physically be difficult or impossible even for you to squeeze your fingers next to each other to play certain chords or melodies. So the scale length, that is the vibrating string length, is really important. The Squire Affinity has a scale length of 648 millimeters, which is 25.5 inches. For comparison, an Epiphone Les Paul Special 2 LTD, why do they all have such long names, I don't know, which would be a fair comparison, has a scale length of 628 millimeters, so 24.75 inches. That's a difference of about 20 millimeters, so we're talking about less than an inch. But that difference will be noticeable in your hand when you try and play even a basic C chord. So you need to either try some guitars with different scale lengths, or if you're a complete beginner, just think if you have above average or below average sized hands, and then I recommend you buy a guitar with either a smaller scale length or a larger scale length. As I said, the difference between a Strat and a Les Paul is less than an inch. But those guitar types are a good comparison because those are pretty much the largest and smallest standard scale lengths that you can get. If you have very small hands, then maybe look at a 3/4 size guitar, which will have an even smaller scale length than that of the Les Paul. There are other factors which affect how comfortable a guitar feels when you play it. They include the radius of the fretboard, which means how rounded the front of the fretboard is, the weight of the guitar, how well the guitar balances on a strap if you intend to use one, and so on. So in the reviews I do, when I do an educational review, I generally don't like to just talk about the specification of a guitar because you can look that up online or you can watch any other review video. I'm really here to try and teach you and give you something more, give you more value than just knowing the spec of the guitar. A few things you need to know. So this has what we call a 6 per side headstock, so all the tuners are on the same side. Or you get a 3 per side on some guitars where you got 3 tuners here and 3 tuners here. That doesn't really matter, but one thing it does is, because this distance is so long, quite often you need these things called string trees. There are some other designs that get around this, but string trees can make the tuning a little bit tricky. It means that the string can get stuck on this while you're tuning, and it maybe isn't the smoothest tuning experience, especially for a beginner. It's not the end of the world, but just something to be thinking about. When you're tuning, if you're still feeling you're out of tune and the string isn't moving, maybe gently press here to release it from here to get it to slide. What else do you need to know? We've got 3 pickups. These are 3 single coils, and they change from sound. You get brighter when you select this pickup. If you go 1 forwards, the sound is coming from these 2. This is the sound from here. This is the sound from these 2. And this is the sound from here. So this switch is just changing where the sound is coming from. And basically, if the sound is coming from this pickup, it sounds brighter. If it's coming from this pickup, it sounds warmer. So for example, that's very bright and very nasal. And that's very smooth. So it depends on what kind of sound and what kind of music you're playing as to which sound you want. If you're playing sound with distortion on, you maybe want this bridge to sound more aggressive. If I put a distortion sound on, for power chords and heavier sounds, you probably want the sound from here rather than the neck here. It sounds brighter and more aggressive from the bridge pickup, that's this pickup, than the neck pickup. But it's personal preference. If you want to play a smooth solo, that might be more to your taste than... So a great thing about the Stratocaster is the variety of sounds you can get from it. This is the bridge pickup, this is the neck pickup, and this changes where the sound comes from, as we've said. But you've also got 2 tone controls. So this tone control controls the tone from this pickup, and this tone control controls the tone from this pickup. And they're basically just treble roll-offs. So you get treble, you get the bright sound, and then you can roll it back to get it darker. So you can go from everything rolled off, and in the neck position, to that level of brightness. But notice these 2 tone controls don't affect this pickup at all. So it's even more noticeable in my opinion on clean sounds. That's brighter. And that's darker. In the middle pickup, then it's this control. So you get that more kind of wah 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 kind of sound, rather than a more nasally kind of sound. So the variety of sound you can get from a Strat is really cool. We've got a tremolo arm here. There's a nice extra feature. You get what's called a hardtail on some guitars instead of this. So a lot of guitars don't have a tremolo unit. You've got to think if the styles of music you play require one or not. You also get a thing called a floating bridge, whereas this one kind of sits against the side of the body. If you look at it sideways, if we look close up, you could see this sits on top of the body. Whereas a floating bridge has space beneath it and it can go both ways. So you can go backwards, which you can't really do on this system. You can only go down and up, whereas the other one could go up and down. So that's another thing. If you like music like Eddie Van Halen's music, then you really kind of need a floating bridge for that. That makes a big difference. There's always ways around it. I'm a big believer that a guitar is just a guitar. There's only 12 notes, as I say in almost every video. Doesn't matter, you know, you could play flamenco on this. It's not a flamenco guitar. Flamenco guitarists would tell you you can't do that. That's terrible. We've got a cool stripe on the back. This is where the truss rod goes. So there's a metal bar down the neck on most guitars, and you adjust it up here down this hole, and that's to keep the neck straight. So that resists the strings pulling it forwards. The strings are pulling the neck forwards, and this truss rod, this metal bar down the middle of the neck, is pulling it backwards. And on a Fender, they quite often fit them through the back and then put a stripe there. On a lot of guitars, you fit them through the front and then glue the fretboard on top. But it used to be you fit them through the back on some guitars, on some models like this, and then you glue this strip of wood on top of it, which is just a nice feature. You've got a bolt-on neck. There are 3 main different designs of neck joint. You get what's called a set neck, where they glue it on. You get a through neck, where the neck is one piece of wood and they glue the sides on. And then you get a bolt-on neck, where the body is one piece and the neck is one piece, and you put bolts through the middle, which is what this is. You load the strings through the back. They go through these holes here, and then over the saddles. These are called the saddles. This is called the bridge, and then over the nut. So when I was talking about the scale length earlier, this is the nut, this is the bridge, and the length of string between it is called the scale length, that vibrating length. The length up here doesn't come into it because depending on how this is made and the design, this could be longer or shorter. It's not important. This is called the scale length, and that affects the distances between the frets. So if the scale length is shorter, these frets are slightly closer together to produce the exact same notes. I like this a lot. As I've said, I think it's a fantastic guitar for the price, absolutely crazy good price. But the things to take away from this video are that there are lots of different types of guitars, and the important elements of the naming system of electric guitars are the maker's name, the possible subsidiary company, the shape or type of the electric guitar, the model name, and then the variations within that model series. And that one of the most important things to consider when buying a guitar is the size of your hands and how comfortable a specific guitar feels for you to play. Not how great the shop assistant can make it, not how great your favorite artist can make it, but how much comfort and enjoyment you get from playing it. And finally, one of the most overlooked factors in playing comfort is the scale length, that is the vibrating string length. It's the vibrating string length because the overall string length doesn't come into that figure, just the part of the string that can vibrate. The scale length affects the distances between the frets, and that hugely impacts how comfortable a guitar feels. I'll leave it there for today, rewatch this and make some notes, and after rewatching it, leave a comment if anything is still unclear, and I'll do my best to help you. I'm Pete Cook, soundtuition.com. Is that there will often be codes next to the name. Codes next to the name. Something else that is